Hello, fellow rocket enjoyers. Welcome back to the next episode of Foundations, and we're here now. With last episode, we managed to get ourselves our first satellite into orbit correctly of the moon. So, with that being said, what do we need to do now? Well, we are going to do a couple things. We're working towards both continuing our deep space program to go to other planets, and then also getting into orbit and with human beings and put them there for an extended period of time, a couple of days to a week. So we're going to accept the first lunar orbiter contract mission, and we're also going to accept the orbital test flight mission. The reason for the orbital test flight mission is we need that for our crewed orbit. We need to do an orbital crewed test flight of an uncrewed capsule before they will, well, allow us to put a human up there. We did get some additional science, is because that will get us better research efficiency, and will also get us towards interplanetary communications. We need interplanetary communications if we are to actually communicate with early probes. Now, those probes are only going to be able to actually communicate to Venus and not to Mars. We're going to need tech level 4, which is improved communications. Until then, we can't get to Mars reliably. Okay, we're here on the 25th of June 1960 for the launch of Alpha 3 again towards the moon. We're going to set ourselves up for a pathway to actually target the moon, because that's what we need to do. And hopefully our probe orbiting the lunar surface is going to have a brother very, very soon. Rocket parameters are all looking good. We've got all of our settings up correctly. We do need to change some of our staging information around. And liftoff of Alpha 3B, carrying ourselves the second lunar probe, or second lunar orbiter probe. We call that, I think this would be Lunar 7, technically speaking. And we're burning through that fuel rapidly as we ascend upwards, going through the atmosphere. And as you can see there, those are those bigger pads. Those are those Saturn V pads that are very, very impressive indeed. Okay, we're 20 seconds out. And separation of those two stages beautifully there, allowing us to begin our ascent upwards. Engine ignition of the third stage engine, and we're away. Good hot stage. So far all engines have performed as expected. Good orbital insertion. We're going to have engine cut off. Good. And separation. RCS is looking good. Okay, we're going to target the moon with a transfer plan. Good engine start, and we are going towards the moon. Hopefully we'll have a fully successful TLI burn. Okay, relatively speaking, pretty good cutoff. We're going to separate the primary payload. We are in a bit of a spin. That puts us into a bit of a spin. That's unfortunate. That is going to mean we're going to have to immediately begin correction maneuvers to stop the spin, and also to adjust our planned orbit. So let me focus it on the moon. Focus in. And as we can see here, our periapsis is, well, you know, we're going to be flying by the moon. That's not really the distance we want for our periapsis there. So we're going to begin an immediate adjustment. So we're going to go towards the retrograde. We are going to then fire our engine, and this will bring us in to being about where I want to be. We're then going to kill velocity. We are going to then time warp forward as we approach the moon. Going to make sure that all of our science instruments are prepared and ready to go, which they are, which is perfect. And we're going to time warp into position to fire the main thruster, at which point we will begin our deceleration, which is, you know, we're talking something like 15 minutes, 18 minutes of burn time here. So we're going to time warp this at 4 times, and we're going to slowly bring ourselves in to lower our orbit, lower our velocity, to get us into a nice clean circular orbit above the moon. And we're about 6.1, and we're nearly under 5 kilometers, at which point we will stop the burn, and we will then do a circularization burn again, but after a single orbit of about 4 hours. So abort node selection. 400 kilometers I think is more than enough. We're going to kill rotation. We're going to get back outside from the dark side of the moon, and then we're going to attract ourselves, or we'll get that solar energy going, and there is the moon in all of its beautiful glory below us. With that in mind, we completed Lunar Orbiter, and we're going to head back to our spaceport with a successful mission in a row of orbiting, which is fantastic for the space agency. We'll complete it, we get 300 reputation. Reputation is providing a subsidy level, controls the amount of subsidy level we can get to. Completed it, we are then going to go ahead and activate the uncrewed lunar surface exploration. Now, there are 3 parts to this program. There is the lunar landing uncrewed, so that is just land anywhere with a lunar vehicle uncrewed. There is the lunar orbiter and mapper, which will enter orbit of the moon with better equipment to provide us, imaging of ice or other potential interesting things on the lunar surface. And then there is far side lunar landing, where we need to land on the far side of the moon, and that would require a communication relay. So we're going to go ahead and hit fast for this. Next, I think what we're going to do is design ourselves the new stage for our launch vehicle. And what I mean by this is we're going to take our existing stage that we have on top of the launch vehicle, our stage 3, and we're going to adjust that to use the new RD-119. The 119 has a significantly big oomph in impulse. So if we just separate the first stage from, or the first and second stage from the rocket, we take away the RD-0105, and we add instead the RD-119, which is, there's a lot of RDs, I do say that myself, there is a lot. We take the RD-119, yes, it looks a bit odd, but if you look at the engine specifications, this provides us 334 seconds, with the second configuration providing us 362 seconds of specific impulse. This is a significantly more efficient engine comparatively to this engine, which, yes, gets us 324 seconds, which is not bad. However, this one provides us with more thrust, more ISP, and also, once we get the second configuration, a second ignition. That second ignition can play a really big, important part in potential launches. Another thing that, because we are hot staging this vehicle, we can now remove the RCS, because there's no longer a need for the RCS here, as there are RCS nodules using the engine's own fuel source. So we're going to take the engine that we have here, we're going to add in the RD-119 fuel, upgrade the avionics while we're at it, and then we're going to lengthen out this tank accordingly. I'm also going to colour it, I think, a little bit more to make it look a little bit nicer comparatively to what we currently had, because it's looking a little plain comparatively to our other stages. So, with that engine sorted out like that, that provides us with how much? Let's just check. This provides us with 440 seconds. That's a bit much. We need 330 seconds. So that much. That provides us with 330 seconds of delta V. We have a now tonnage of 14.4 tons. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to make that a 15-ton vehicle. And then with that now done, we're going to have to extend out the planned interstage, like that. And I'm probably going to paint the interstage actually white. There we go. So that now provides us with the slightly better, now much longer, upper stage. And that now done, we can see that we can put in orbit approximately 4.5 tons of payload. And that is going to be supremely important for our lunar landing missions, which are going to take the most amount of payload we've ever done to be successful. Now, a few things. First off, we've got to get those humans into space as quickly as possible. That means hiring additional pilots, which I'm going to do. We can hire 4 more pilots, and we're going to get those straight into training. So, proficiency training. And the next thing that we need to do is think about potentially bigger launch vehicles. Now, our aim is to land a human being on the moon. Considering that we're going to be landing a human being on the moon, that's going to take us quite a bit of time. And we need to pre-plan the kind of launch complexes we might need. And I think a larger launch vehicle for larger payloads into low Earth orbit is going to be important. We can probably extend the Alpha series, or the Alpha 3, to the Alpha 5 and make that kind of a thing. However, we are going to need to be looking at probably replacing the entire lineup with a new generation of rockets in the next couple of years, because there is going to eventually be a dead end there where I want to refocus our efforts towards hydrolocks, which we will eventually get to, of course. We don't really have any abilities to launch anything right now, and that means that because we don't have anything to launch right now, we kind of just have to wait. So that's what we're going to do. Launch Complex 3A is ready to go, however, and that means that we need to set ourselves up for first lunar uncrewed landing. So let's just sort out our LC3 Alpha Series launchpad. And let me go into our VAB, and we're going to discuss how to land on the moon. Now, in the news, you may have found that the Russian mission Lunar 25 failed recently, and not something that hasn't currently happened, which is the Indian landing that they have reached orbit, as far as I understand. The Indian lander mission. We don't know yet if it will be successful. So, with our 4.5 tons now capable of putting that into a low Earth orbit, we need to design, like we did with our orbiter, everything around that. So, to give you an idea, a 300 kilogram payload to land on the moon is about what we're going to be looking at, and to land on the moon, you're going to be needing upwards of 2,700 to 3,000 meters per second of delta V once you've actually sitting above the surface. So 3,200 meters per second just to transfer to the moon, and another 2,700 meters per second of delta V to land the thing on the moon. There are two mission approaches we can do. We enter orbit first and then land, which gives us more control over our landing position, or we directly land towards our launch site, which means that we put ourselves on the impact trajectory with the moon, and then we land in that entire trajectory, so we don't do any kind of orbit, check systems out. This, of course, calls into question why you would pick either. The first one, orbiting the moon, this requires more delta V, but gives us more options. This is something we would be able to do if we had some of that technology, but we don't currently have. The second one, we're doing because it is technically easier on our mission requirements. So, let's design ourselves our initial lander. So we're going to need something that's relatively small. We're going to create avionics, and we need something that can control itself. So we're going to use deep space avionics for this. And then we're going to create a secondary tank, which is going to have the same diameter as the top tank, but is going to sit below. So we're probably going to use something like 50mm diameter legs. We're then going to rotate the legs to be something like this. This will give it some width. We need to be careful because we can't retract these, so these will need to be able to fit in the rocket itself. Give it some length, and then this cylinder is going to provide us with that landing leg that I wanted. So we can go like here, do it like that. We're going to create quite a large diameter landing leg, or landing gear, because that will provide us with a much easier landing experience once we actually do touch down. So we're going to go ahead and make this flat with the surface, because we want to not die, because that would be a problem, not have the vehicle explode. So with those landing legs now set up correctly, we're then going to put in the science. We want to add a thermometer, we want to add a barometer, and we want to add, that's about all we need initially for our landing operation. So, then we need fuel. We want to have about maybe 400 meters per second of delta V, something around there for the landing. We're going to use high test peroxide because it's our best fuel for RCS thrusters. And so we're going to reduce this fuel until we get about 400 meters per second-ish. Something like that. And that gives us quite a relatively low thrust-to-weight ratio. Let's actually check that thrust-to-weight ratio on the moon. That only gives us a thrust-to-weight ratio of 0.57, which is quite low. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to add 3 of these engines, and we're going to put them in the respective place for our landing legs to give us some stabilization for landing on the moon. And that now gives us a positive thrust-to-weight ratio for the moon's gravity. Of course, remember the moon has a much lower gravity than Earth, which thus means we need much less thrust to achieve higher thrust-to-weight ratios. So with that now accomplished, we are going to need to add in RCS as well. So this provides us with rotation as well as just general control of the vehicle, which is exactly what we're looking for. With that now done, something that I am also going to do is we're going to add high pressure tanks to these conventional tanks so that they don't flop around. We're basically going to pressurize the tanks here so that when they touch the surface, they'll be in a decent spot overall. Okay, with that now done, we basically have our landing vehicle. This is what we're going to be using. But let's make it a little bit prettier before we go ahead and do anything. So we're going to make this a nice white colour, and make sure that the internal also white colour. We might use some black landing legs like this, with some white pads, like that, to give us a nice look on when we're on the lunar surface. And we're going to add our flag as well, which we can add to the vehicle. Just scale it down. We can just add it here. There we go. There's our lander, and we'll call this Lunar Lander. Then we need to put this thing on the surface of the Earth, or the surface of the Moon. Not on the surface of the Earth. We can only do that very easily. Now, what we essentially are going to have two different situations. The final descent and landing, which will be what this vehicle will do, which is these very nice thrusters. And then after that landing, before that landing, we're going to need to get rid of most of that velocity, that 2,700 meters per second delta V I was talking about. To do so, we're going to need some kind of solid rocket motor, or we're going to need a engine. So we're going to go ahead and put the Antares rocket below like this. And this is going to provide us with the necessary reduction in velocity, 3,000 meters per second of delta V in terms of reduction. This gives us a payload of 1.3 tons that needs to be sent towards the moon. That 1.3 tons is looking pretty good now. However, there is a bit of an issue. As we're on the way towards the moon, we might have some problems. Because it's now 1.3 tons, we're going to need some kind of control system for transit to and from the moon. We also need to have some power systems. So we're going to create a configuration for deep space, and we're going to make a 1.3 ton capable avionics core. This is going to be pretty big, pretty heavy, and it's something that I don't like doing, but we're going to have to do it either way. We're going to add in some electrical charge, and I'm also going to check how much time we will actually have. Of course, let's assume that we shut down the avionics cores. That gives us 9 days, so we can reach the moon just fine like that. Now, to actually stay on the moon, we are going to need some power systems, so let's first have a look at what we can do about that. As you can see here, this will provide enough power once the avionics are off. Avionics will need to be used during certain periods of flight, and so not going to be too much of an issue for us. We are going to need to add in ourselves a communication that we previously used, and we're going to add that onto the top with an extension, and that will give us 33 dBs of power like we were before, and that will get us what we want. And with that now done, we have our lunar lander set up correctly, though I do want to make sure the thrust for the engines will work. We are going to enable cross feed, and I'm going to just safely put this RCS on HTTP RCS just in case. And let's add a little bit more fuel here. We're trying 100 meters per second LV. So then let's actually test that this would well work. And we're going to get ready to descend. So we're going to fire the SRB. Okay, it does start to spin out of control a little bit. That is a bit of an issue. We can fix this, however. We can do what we like to call Operation Spin Up. And then we're going to rotate. So we can see here, rotate, activate engine. Okay, that's good enough. I will say that stability is good enough. And then can we kill that rotation well enough? Yes, we can. We can kill the rotation. With that rotation then done, we can separate from the vehicle. And that will then provide us with a vehicle that's now on its own for planned landing. Now, we could see something significant increases in terms of Delta V performance if we had better avionics. Sadly, we do not have better avionics. And that just showed something else, is that we need to increase the control mass up here to 470 kilograms, otherwise it's not going to work. With that now done, we've done our lunar lander. I will see you guys in the next episode where we aim to land ourselves on the moon for the first time in history. I hope you guys have enjoyed the content, and thank you to all the members. If you do want to support the channel, do become one. Thank you.